Have you ever wondered what it would be like to ride a wild bucking horse, a wild bucking bull, wrestle down a steer, or rope a calf going 20 to 30 miles per hour? You may also be wondering why I'm wearing what I'm wearing today. Well, I'm here to inform you about the history behind rodeo, what the contestants wear at the rodeo, and the events involved in the sport of rodeo. In the 1700s, Spanish cattlemen called vaqueros ruled the West. They tended to the ranches by breaking young, untrained horses, roping runaway cattle, or branding steers. Their way of living eventually spread across the U.S. to the American cowboys, and they picked up on their way of living and developed their own ranches. Throughout the history, they developed these events and these different chores that they did and turned them into rodeos where crowds would gather to see and watch these specific rodeos. According to Ralph Clark from About.com, those daily chores turned into specific events in the rodeos today. Those specific events are team roping, calf roping, and bronc riding. And later they added on new ones, other events to include more contestants, including women. According to the article on friendsofrodeo.com, rodeo is not like any other professional sport because it was emerged from an industry, from their daily chores, working long hours on the ranch, and it turned into a sport today like it has. Another thing that's unlike any other sport is because there's so many different athletes involved. There's the contestants, the men and women that compete, their horses, the cattle, the calves who rope, the steers who rope, the bucking horses and the bucking bulls, which is very unique from any other sport. And one way that it is like a sport is basketball players have uniforms that they're required to wear, and those uniforms you can't compete unless you don't have them on, this is what we are required to wear for rodeo. Cowboy hat, a long sleeve button-up shirt, jeans, and leather boots. And those developed from back in the West when they wore them on the ranches. The hats and the long sleeve shirts, they wore those to keep the sun from burning them really bad, and then they wore the jeans and the leather boots to keep out of brush. And it just emerged into our uniforms for today. So rodeo is a very unique sport in today's society because it's a look in the past, but yet offers modern style of living in an electrifying atmosphere. Now that you know a little bit more about the history behind rodeo, it's time to get to the events and what it all involves. Some of the main events, according to Intro to Rodeo on About.com, there are 7 main events in pro rodeo. And of those 7 main events, they're divided into 2 different categories, the rough stock events and the timed event. The rough stock events, they have to ride with one hand for 8 seconds, and if they get bucked off, it's considered a no score. And if they do ride for the 8 seconds, they're scored on, there's 2 different judges scoring them, and they score the horse 0 to 25 points, or the bull, and they score the contestant 0 to 25 points. So the average is usually anywhere from 60s to upper 80s and lower 90s at a typical rodeo. And the pro rodeos score even higher just because the horses are better and the contestants are better. And then those events are bareback riding, bronc riding, and bull riding. And I'll show you a little bit more of what they use later on. And then in the timed events, they all compete against the clock. They're working for the fastest time to win the rodeo or win the money, and you could even win trailers and saddles and stuff like that. Those events are the calf roping, the team roping, the steer wrestling, and the barrel racing. And they're all, again, I'll kind of show you what they involve and how that works. And also, all these events, they seem like they're more lean towards men's events. And that's why the WPRA, since there's only 7 main events in the pro rodeo, the men's pro rodeo, which is the barrel racing, is just for women's, they developed an association called the Women's Professional Rodeo Association, where it's only women that compete, and they have the events calf roping, breakaway roping, team roping, barrels, bull riding, and bareback. And yes, the women can compete in rough stock events, the bull riding and the bareback riding, which that gets pretty intense, if you can imagine. But some girls can do that, and they're allowed to do that. And so that just helps involve more women in the sport of rodeo and make it more of an intriguing sport to watch. And so I'll show you now kind of what these all involve for the different events. And I'll start with the rough stock, which is, this is used for bull riding. They strap it down around the bull's belly right behind their front legs, and then they'll cinch it up, they'll put it through this, and pull it tighter on the bull's belly, and then they have to ride with one hand, one up in the air for 8 seconds and to get a score, and if they get bucked off, it's a no score then. Then there's bareback riding, which this is just, it usually has a girth that will go down around the horse's belly and strap behind their front legs as well. And they'll have lamb skin around here, so that's a soft cushion on the horse, and then they put their arms in here like this and just hold on for dear life and get flopped around, it seems like, but that's how they hold on to their bareback horses like that and get a score from that. And then the last event is saddle bronc riding, which involves this halter that goes on the horse that gives the rider something to hold on to when they're riding like this, and so they'll lift up on the horse's head just to give them a little bit of balance. And then they're riding a saddle like this with no saddle horn, of course, and then this goes down around behind the horse's belly, or around the belly, behind the front legs again, and then this goes in the flank. And they have a flank strap on them, all that makes them buck like that. And then in the timed events, there's a lot of roping events, which you'll need your rope for, and then your saddle on your horse. The team roping, they'll have two separate ropers on their horses, and they'll dally. They catch the horns of the steer and then the heels of the steer, and they'll dally and stretch the steer out. And then the calf roping, it's tied under their horn, and they rope the calf, run down there, and then tie it 3 legs together with this string right here, and then that's their time for that. And then the barrel racing, the last event, then steer wrestling. There's a hazer and the steer wrestler in the boxes, and they go out together and they wrestle down the steer. The one guy on the left will wrestle down the steer to get a time for that. And last is the barrel racing, which is, I don't compete in, but they have really, really fast, expensive horses, and they go in a 3-leaf clover pattern around barrels to get their time in the events. So, now that you know a little bit more about the history behind rodeo, what contestants wear, and the different events in rodeo, gather up a group of friends and go to the local rodeos.